I'm a nurse practitioner. I am starting to explore AI and healthcare and trying to see that intersection. And I started this podcast. It's pretty laid back. I just started to have some conversations with industry leaders like yourself, and just to put out feelers, learn more about what people are up to in the health world. And you seem like you have a really cool take on things. So you run you're a writer, publisher for the Diabetic, and maybe founder of
I guess you could say I'm the publisher of Diabetic Investor. I don't know. I'll give you a little history. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 33 years ago.
Type 1.
And yeah, it's more common than people realize. At the time, I was running a money management firm. And when my wife was still alive back then, and so we went to a local high school in Chicago for an educational thing. And during the break, people said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I manage money." And they said, "What do you think of," they started giving me these companies, and they weren't asking me from a therapy perspective. They were asking me from, should I invest in them? And so I'm, handing out business cards. I'm taking notes. Now you got to remember, this is, let's see, mid-90s, I guess, whatever. And when I was doing my research, two things really struck me right off the bat. Number one, a lot of these companies weren't even covered by analysts back then. And number two, the few that were, the analysts were clueless about diabetes.
Yeah.
So to simplify my story a little bit, since I couldn't find good research, I decided to do it myself. So I literally started Diabetic Investor as a side hustle. To tell you how long ago this was, it was a print publication that I sold for $69 a year, and it came out on a monthly basis. Shortly after I started it, the next thing you know, I'm in the Wall Street Journal, I'm in Money Magazine. So the side hustle was becoming a business. And, so over time, I switched it to an internet, publication. And then I sold my other firm to concentrate full time on it.
Yeah.
And I've kind of never looked back. And, I became extraordinarily well read. I don't do it as much, but I used to do a lot of consulting for companies in the industry. I have a lot of clients that are they're professional investors, money managers, venture capitalists, angel investors, and now I'm adding sovereign wealth funds. So I kind of became the guy, because I made a couple rules when I started the business. I would never accept advertising. I didn't want to be, influenced by that.
Yeah.
And I would never sell my subscriber information. I didn't want them to be bothered with, all these, and I gained a reputation for being honest, reliable, varnished, and I have the best contacts in the world. I know everybody. So, over the years, one of the things I've done is I look at the space holistically. I don't, you got patients, you got companies, you've got payers, there's all these, dots. And I've been very good about predicting the future. And because I'm a patient, believe it or not, it is, a huge advantage. I know all about, I'm currently using the Omnipod 5 insulin delivery system. I have the Dexcom G7, so my job when I write and I post, I'm not only looking to educate, I want people to think. There's a lot of BS in the business.
Sure.
And I'm not an analyst, so I don't have a hidden agenda. I'm not looking to do a secondary offering, and there's things that I will see that analysts won't, because if you don't have diabetes, you just don't.
Yeah, you have a different level of investment.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't write novels. That's not my job. I write my posts on the shorter side, but because I know these people are busy and, they don't want to read a novel.
Yeah.
I have, and I continue to publish special reports. I'm on insulin pumps, state of the industry, continuous glucose monitoring, LP-1 therapies. And, like I said, my job is to give an informed opinion. Again, I don't think anybody would ever sit here and say they're lucky to have diabetes, but in my case, it's been a major benefit, so,
I
I
don't
just
have too
run
many
with it.
patients. I work in primary care. I don't have too many patients that say that, but
No. Well, it's funny. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I kind of go on these rants occasionally. Most people have no clue what we go through every day. I remember I was at a conference in Houston, and the guy, he happened to be a type 2 diabetic. And he quickly told me, asked me about, and I said, well, I'm on insulin. He goes, oh, you have the bad kind. And I'm like, what? I didn't know there was a good kind.
right.
And it really is, it really is, it's an eye-opening because, like, I'll go out with people. I live my life with my diabetes, not for it. And so it's been kind of funny because, like, I was at a conference. I think it was actually an ADA conference, the American Diabetes Association. And I have a pretty big following in fan club. And, I love to screw with these people. And so, like, we were out to dinner. I ordered chocolate cake. Like, are you going to eat chocolate cake? I'm like, yes, I'm going to eat chocolate cake. So, but I've run 4 marathons. I've done 15 triathlons. Part of the reason I did all of that was to show my kids that just because dad has type 1 diabetes doesn't mean I can't live a full, productive, active life. And, I don't, there are an enormous number of professional athletes who have diabetes, famous celebrities. I mean, I hate to say it, diabetes is growing, unfortunately. We've seen major advancements in the devices we use and the drugs we take. And, you mentioned AI. That's like the new frontier of diabetes, in my opinion, because there's several reasons why, but one is data power and analytics. But then you have to, okay, what do I do with all this stuff? I get all this data, what do I do with it all?
Yeah.
Now, for me, I know what to do with it all, but for the average, person on the street, and AI has become a great tool. It's becoming a better tool for things like customer support. There's still a lot we don't know. The fact that everybody's cell phone now has become their quote unquote health hub. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a geek, but what I've learned from my geek friends, AI is a great tool, but you need a lot of computing power to make it work. Well, the phones, all the phones now, that's why everything's transitioning to somebody's phone, because a phone has the computing power to do all this stuff. And over the years, I've seen it when you had a bunch of devices that worked independently to now where everything is trying to work together. That's both a blessing and a curse. And I think there is this myth that, I don't know if it's a myth. Everybody thinks it should be perfect, and that's just not possible. How many times you've been somewhere and you drop a phone call? Now, 99% of your time, your phone is going to work.
Sure.
But occasionally, and medical devices, whether it's a CGM or an insulin pump, whatever, I hate to say it, they're going to fail. It happens. And I think that, like I said, this innovation in what I call the analytical side of diabetes is moving faster than the hardware we have is pretty good. The drugs we have are pretty good. I mean, they'll get better, but there won't be any, major, leaps. But now, because of it, because of AI and what I call inter-device connectivity, I know people that are working on combining exercise data with sleep data, with glucose data, with insulin delivery data. You're throwing it all into this pot and mixing it up. But you need a lot of computing power to do that.
Sure.
And it's like I met this group of guys out of the University of Virginia, and they developed some of the best insulin dosing algorithms that are now available. And I was very shocked and surprised to learn, but I was pleasantly surprised to learn that the algorithms, they learn,
Would you say
and
they
that's
work?
learn.
Sure. They adapt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which is great for diabetes, especially because you're not stagnant, I guess is a word I would use. And so basically it's a terrible analogy, but the more you feed the damn thing, the better it gets because, and
Or information.
yeah, it's, the biggest problem that I see isn't analyzing the data. It isn't coming up with recommendations. It's how do you communicate back to the patient?
Yeah.
Because the data's got to be relevant, understandable, and actionable.
But so Dave, take me from all you're on the cusp of and seeing all the cutting edge technology and medicines with diabetes, and how does that bring it back to the diabetic investor? I want to learn a little bit more about what you do. You sharing
Well,
this, all these things you're learning, you sharing this with your following?
yeah, so my subscribers, I'm basically trying to give them an analysis of what happened and a glimpse of what's going to happen. So we always get it first. We always get it right. Just the nature of, my relationships. So, like, for example, this morning, Insulet had an earnings call. Now, even before the call went off, I had told my subscribers they were going to do fine and yada, yada, yada. Today, I kind of tried to give them, okay, they just told us all this stuff. What does it mean?
Yeah.
Not for today, but for 5 years from today. And, there's an old saying that says, I believe in knowing the future because that's where I'm going to live. Yes, I make calls on companies. I'll say buy this company or not, short this one. I think one of the greatest compliments that I was probably ever paid is one of my subscribers said, not everybody likes to read what you have to say, but we have to read it because you're right. So I point out, I'm not, my job is to tell what I believe the truth to be. I tell people all the time, you want a friend, get a dog. Okay. These are publicly traded companies. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their stakeholders. Even the companies that are not public, that are still privately held, they have investors too. They're just not, public. I mean, a lot of quote unquote a patient advocate. And I think the best example of that was a couple of years ago. There was all this rigmarole about the out of pocket cost of insulin, and a lot of misinformation was being spread because most people don't understand how the business actually works. That Lilly doesn't sell insulin to David Kliff. Lilly, there's all these steps before it gets to me, and I'm very simple in my approach in that I've been doing this for 30 years. We have spent billions of dollars. Billions of dollars have been made, yet from an outcomes perspective, we're really no different than we were 30 years ago.
When was the Diabetic Investor founded?
98, I think.
1998. Yeah, that's a fair amount of time. So you had this interest as side hustle, but you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 3 years ago?
31 years. 30,
Oh,
30,
there it is.
33 years ago.
Yes, sir. Hence prompting the side hustle, and here we are today. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I missed
So
it.
I think, let's say, I don't celebrate what a lot of people do, the diversity, but I think I was 31 years old when I was diagnosed.
Yeah, it's not too common to diagnose type 1 for adults. Usually that's found in childhood.
Actually, that's a myth. It is
Tell me.
more common. It is more common than people realize. There is no one size fits all diabetes. Like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions about the disease. It is a metabolic disease, an autoimmune disease. I mean, it's not, but one of the most respected researchers that I know, and I've known this guy forever, we laugh because we say, how do we cure something that we don't know what causes it? There's a correlation between obesity and diabetes. There's a genetic correlation as well. I mean, use my own family as an example. My parents didn't have it. My oldest brother has it, but because he became obese. I always tell people this. Yes, it's a chronic condition, but it's manageable if you choose to do it. There are some people who don't want to put in the work, and I understand that because it is work. Somebody goes out to dinner and they eat and they don't think about it. Well, when I go out to dinner, I'm like, okay, how many carbs is it? What kind of carbs are they? Did I exercise today? How much insulin is on board? It's like somebody did a study that said a diabetic makes an additional 300 or 400 decisions a day because of their diabetes. The study that impacted me most when I first got started, and I'm trying to find a copy of it because came out so long. It was out of the University of Chicago, and I believe it was published in the AMA journal, JAMA, I think it was called. And conclusion of the study was that patients would trade years off their life rather than do everything they're supposed to do to manage their diabetes properly. And I think most people don't realize I don't get any days off. I mean, I'm diabetic 365 days a year.
From your health concerns, not your business, but from your health concerns, it's with you every day.
Yeah. And I think what makes diabetes different, it's a very patient-centric disease. Now, if you walked into a doctor's office and he told you that you had cancer, you're going to pay attention.
Sure.
You're going to do but a lot of people, when they're diagnosed with diabetes, say, okay, I got diabetes,
Yeah. They're underwhelmed.
and again, over the last few years, I've been much, I'm not saying I'm untouchable, but I am. So, I become much more vocal about I don't like the way doctors interact with patients. I don't like guilt, never
Oh,
works.
no.
I grew up with Jewish guilt. It never works. But I've always said that a diabetic needs a consultant, not a doctor. Where they give them the facts and then let the diabetic, manage, make their own decisions. It's just like right now, all these GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, they're excellent drugs.
Yeah,
And
they are.
there's still people out there who use them because they think it's cheating when it comes to weight loss. I'm like, okay, if you want to feel that way, okay.
Yeah, have at it.
You know,
We've seen transformations in people, male and female.
oh my
Sir,
God, I mean,
in a short period of time, 6 months, 12 months.
oh yeah, it is. I have to say that, remember, I wrote probably 10 years ago that if diabetes was really going to get tackled, it would have to be a pharmacological solution. Behavior change doesn't work. And I will have to say that GLP-1 therapy, what's simpler? You do it once a week, it's not a painful injection, and the results are astonishing. It's not just diabetes, and it's not just a weight loss. There's cardiovascular benefits, there's hypertension benefits.
No, it's liver disease and the impact of liver disease. And in fact, I was going to throw one at you. I have an article this weekend I'm looking over. This might not be new to you, but it's new to me. I mean, I've heard of type 3 diabetes before, but I have a patient with pancreatitis, but her blood sugar's through the roof. I think she has type 3 diabetes. So I have some information to review this weekend.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost astonishing. Now they're thinking about, there's evidence building that it can be used to treat alcohol addiction.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I haven't heard that.
And which, yeah,
Is that what it is? What satiates an appetite? Does it satiate that craving?
that's the evidence that's building, without getting overly complicated. Basically it makes you feel full. But a lot of these people, not only are they eating less, they're drinking less. And part of the reason they're drinking less is it makes liquor taste different, which is, now I'm not on the drug, but I know so many people that are. So to me, it's almost astonishing the benefits they find out the more these drugs go into the population. And I'm thrilled, to be honest. I'm just thrilled.
Dave, it is amazing. Tell me about some of the successes and some challenges that you've had with the Diabetic Investor. What are some things you're most proud of?
The thing I'm most proud of, that I've helped millions of people with diabetes. What I write has an impact, not, on how companies run their business. It's a positive impact for patients. So I'm very proud of that. I've changed the paradigm. I was the first to do what I'm doing. So I literally invented a category. There's other people who try to do some of the stuff that I do, but they're not as in depth as I am when it comes to the business side of it. I'm probably the only person who started a business who wanted to go out of business. I was hoping I wanted a cure, and we're no closer to a cure today than we were 30 years ago. My biggest disappointments, I would have to say, there's so many people who live in this like la la land and don't really understand that. And I write this all the time. There are times when the business of diabetes interferes with the management of diabetes. This is just the nature of the beast. During this debate over access to insulin, I kept writing that you could give away insulin for free and it wouldn't improve outcomes. Sure, a patient would have access to it, but it doesn't mean they're using it right. And that's probably my second biggest disappointment, is that education is the quickest distance between diabetes and better management. It's a multifaceted problem. I'm not afraid to yell at other patients. I'm not into these kumbaya things. I do bear responsibility. This is my diabetes, and do I like it? No. But I am responsible for it. I have
Sure.
a choice. I don't like being seen as a victim. I'm not. I do not have a disability. Well, it depends if you ask my kids, um, but I don't have any physical disabilities. And, I don't like the victimization of diabetes. Some of the newer patient advocates are beginning to understand that this is not as easy as they thought. Patient is part of the equation. And I've always divided the world into three very distinct groups. 10% of us, I call us Uber users. We're down with it. We get it. We're into this.
Yeah.
We educate, on the other end on the other end of the spectrum, you got 20% of the patients, forget it. They're disengaged. They don't want to be engaged. I'm not saying they're a lost cause, but they just don't want to be
Maybe
active with their
overwhelmed.
time. But the largest group, most of the people that I know, and it doesn't matter if they're type 1 or type 2, they know they have diabetes. They know they have to do something about it. They just don't want it to run their life. I'm a strong advocate for simple solutions. The
Yeah.
dumber, the better.
But yeah, keep it simple.
You know, there's a company right now, it's called Beta Bionics, and they have an insulin pump called the iLet. What makes that system attractive is it's easy to learn. I'm on the Ep.5. It's it's a pretty simple system to learn. I think that's why one reason why insulin is doing so well is because, they're not asking you to climb Mount Everest. Yes, there's some learning involved, but it's not like the old days. So when I first went on my first pump with a MiniMed 508, it took me 4 months to get it right. I'm glad I reach people on a global basis.
Yeah.
My subscribers are from all over the world, and I like that.
Well, that's what I want to hear more about. Who's subscribing to the Diabetic Investor? I think is it a mixed verse? What do your subscribers look like? Well, tell me about them.
Subscribers are industry people,
Yes.
like Insulet, Dexcom, Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly. They license my content. Then I have another group, which is what I call professional investors.
Yes.
So this would include the sovereign wealth funds I work with, venture capital firms,
Yeah.
angel investors, Wall Street firms.
Are there regular Joes and Susies subscribing to?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I mean, for an individual license to the site for 1 year is $1,250. I offer other options. They're all on my website. But like most of the companies or groups I deal with, they buy a license option. And I have different license options depending on what these companies want from me. So, I've worked with Google and Apple and Amazon. People, it's so funny when I tell them that, they're like, what does Amazon have to do with you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, believe it or not, they carry a lot of diabetes products. So, there's things they were looking at, and if you're going to learn the market and understand the market, there isn't anything else like Diabetic Investor.
Would it be beneficial for diabetics that I work with, or maybe somebody new to diabetes, to be one of your subscribers?
Yeah. I mean, if they want to
As
know what's
opposed to my
going on,
brothers work in the financial world, as opposed to that segment and the people you just mentioned.
I do, it's fun because I do clarify a lot of things for people. And that's part of my job because, like there's some companies that are working on all these different things that I don't want to call them cures. Okay. But like, most of the average human, when they read stuff like in mainstream media, I know the hurdles these companies are going to face. That's never talked about. I also understand for a lot of these people, they don't understand that I'm involved with this group here and there. I donate some of my time. It's called the Diabetes Network of Arizona. They do good work. And, when I talk to their members, they have these camps and stuff. And what do they about? Their health insurance. Okay. What does everybody about?
Yeah.
Their health
Yeah.
insurance.
Common
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah,
Is,
and I try to explain them why it is the way that it is. I said I said, A, it's not personal. Don't take it personal. I said, B, this is about money. I hate to say this, but it is true. The reason that they make patients jump through all these hoops sometimes is they realize the patient will give up and just pay for it out of pocket. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it is a fact. And not everybody realized how to reach out for help either. Like, believe me, every company out there, Dexcom, Abbott, Insulet, you name it. If you're having problems, let's say you're a Medicare patient, just hypothetical, okay? They want the business, believe me. They'll help you. But a lot of people don't know how to do that.
yeah.
They don't know how
That,
to ask for help. I hate to say this. I mean, well, it's good and bad. I mean, the government, they're not really trying to put up hurdles, but because of their requirements, these companies are forced to do things that look pretty stupid, for example, but that's what the government is telling them they have to do. It is like everybody calls up, let's say you call up customer support. What are they always asking you? Not just your name, birthday, all this stuff. They have to do that. And customer service, thank God, is getting better because of AI. One reason, there's a lot of these chat boxes, where you go on the website instead of talking live, you're texting and, but I listen, I understand the frustration. I get it. Okay. I really did. And it's even more frustrating because, we have a chronic condition. We need to stop.
yeah.
Insulin to me is a life sustaining drug. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And if there's a shortage or if there's a shipping problem or whatever, that creates stress for patients. And stress and diabetes don't go well together. We have a pretty screwed up healthcare system here. There's so many layers to it. And it's not like you go to like Canada or Mexico or where they have single payer systems. It's a whole different world. But here in America, you've got pharmacies, you've got pharmacy benefit managers, you've got health insurance providers, you've got all of these, you've got distributors. I mean, it's all of these things. Each silo has their own set of rules and regulations. And I use Amazon as my pharmacy now. My health insurance, that's who they go through, which I actually like. But it is funny because every year they have to renew my insulin prescription. It's a requirement. And I laugh about it because, okay, there's no cure for type 1 diabetes. It's a chronic condition. Why am I required? That sounds kind of foolish, right? Why am I required to have this damn thing renewed?
Yeah. Why do we have to keep updating it?
Yeah. And the reason is there's a lot of reasons for it, but originally the reason is doctors had a lot of influence with the FDA. So somebody once said this is a full employment act for doctors because they force you to come in to run all these tests. Now, I have very good relation with my doctors and I don't always have to go and I get blood work all the time. That's part of the drill. It's funny because it's not like my diabetes is going away and I will never not need insulin. I know recently there was talk about changing some of this, but I don't think it's changed just yet. It is kind of funny if you ask me.
Dave, what's the future look like for the diabetic investor? Where are things going?
um, Not really sure. I love doing it. I have a really loyal and surprisingly growing subscriber list. I don't know, to be honest with you. I really haven't thought about it much. I've had some companies approach me about acquiring Diabetic Investor and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that yet. And I'm still pretty young, and I'm having too much fun. I don't trade time for money. I trade knowledge for money. And so I don't work like a normal person. I don't go to the office at 9 and leave at 5. Yes, do I write a lot? Yeah. I have something to say, I'll write. I've been approached by some foreign countries about working with them to bring more modern diabetes technologies to their countries, and they want to make sure they're bringing the right ones in. So they use me to help them pick and choose. I wish I knew what the future was. But in a way, I kind of liked it. I don't know because it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you have a unique spot, unique position. It's kind of fascinating. And I have this question that might not fit for you. I asked most of my guests, if you could fix one thing, or kind of like what keeps you up at night, if you could either improve revenue, decrease time, or decrease costs, what would you focus on? What would be your priority?
I've always wanted to be more like video oriented, but I'm too damn lazy to do it.
I mean, you're pretty charismatic, man. This is a good conversation. I feel like it would fly. I feel like it would be pretty seamless for you.
Well, I've done a lot of podcasts. That's pretty simple.
I saw that on your
Um,
website.
I'll be honest, I don't actively manage my Instagram, Facebook. I'm
Yeah,
pretty active, but it's like, okay, do I want to do all this stuff or do I want to go play golf? I don't know. I'd rather play golf. And my kids, they're shocked when, grandpa posts, like a video. They're like, oh boy, look what grandpa did. And I know the technology's better now. I mean, it's easier to do. I just don't know if I want to do it or not. I mean, I don't have like, I'm very well known. I don't really market my business. Business just comes to me, because people ask who's the guy, and I'm the guy. It's very flattering. I think I've earned it. My business is, I don't have a lot of overhead. I have somebody who manages my website, but it's all pretty virtual, and it's not like not running a logistics company or something like that. But I mean, honestly, God, I enjoy it. And it's my baby. I invented this. I nurtured it, and I've made it what it is today. And it's sometimes it's tough to let go of that, and I've developed,
My wife owns
yeah,
a primary care clinic. That's how she talks about it, for her baby.
I've developed a very strong brand identity. And maybe one day I'll walk away. I don't know. I mean, honestly, God, I've given up on my goal to be a professional golfer. So I guess I'll have to just play golf for fun. I know there's probably a lousy answer, but I really don't have any.
No, I think it's a great answer. I think it's a great answer. Well, that's awesome, man. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I appreciate you sharing your insights. And I also liked your take on things. You said a lot of things personally, I think, about maintaining a sense of value and integrity. And that really resonated with me. I'm going to have to go on the Diabetic Investor and learn some more and see what else I can take away from your information from your podcast.